Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I bring you founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, artists, you name it, across the world of crypto and blockchain. And I have I have two amazing guests for this podcast interview today. And, I should have asked them how do I pronounce their last names, but I'm going to give it my best shot. The first guest I have is Deniz Kalaslioglu, who's the co-founder and CTO of Soarchain, and I apologize for butchering your name. And then I also have Marco Baracevic, who is the product lead of Cosmos SDK at the Binary Builders. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you'll let me know, Deniz, how badly I did on your name.
No, it was fine.
Thank you for joining me. So let's kick things off. I ask you both, what is your background? What are your backgrounds, and are the logical backgrounds for what you're doing now?
You want to kick it off, Dennis, and then I'll follow you.
Yeah, sure. I'm coming from an electrical and electronics engineering background originally. I've been working in the automotive industry for more than 10 years. I worked at assisted companies such as Toyota, Ford, Suzuki, Bosch to achieve different levels of autonomy in their current and future products. I've been actively involved with the development of compute and connectivity systems, including both the hardware and the software to enable safer and more autonomous driving for different automotive companies. In terms of crypto, I've been in crypto since 2013, if you count Bitcoin mining back then. Got involved in a couple of Ethereum-based projects in 2017. So I've been in the ecosystem for about a decade. But yeah, I believe that the blockchain itself should be used for solving real life problems that already exist in people's lives rather than creating problems to solve. So Soarchain is my first project that utilizes blockchain, which we started roughly in 2022. So I guess that makes me a good candidate for doing an automotive mobility related blockchain project.
Awesome. Marco, my background is a bit mixed. So I grew up in business, went to business school, and then once I left business school, I asked myself if I wanted to stay in Europe, and the answer was yes, and was the easiest way to stay in Europe without having to learn the German language because I was in Germany, and the answer was learn how to code. And so I started learning how to code. I think that was 7, 8 years ago. I've done DevRels to protocol engineering on Tendermint, which is a consensus algorithm on Cosmos SDK. And now I lead the Cosmos SDK on product. Still do some coding, still able to fit that in. So definitely enjoy it. But yeah, that's kind of like a short synopsis of myself. I've been in Cosmos for 5 years, 5, 6 years. So it was the first crypto project I joined and haven't left.
I like your solution. If you love a location and you want to stay there, learn how to code, and you can. I like
Exactly.
it. Thank you. So I want to ask first, Soarchain. What is Soarchain and binary builders all about? And how are you shaping the decentralized future of mobility and DePIN using the Cosmos SDK?
So I'll just intro and give the word to Marco. So we provide a completely decentralized platform with a built-in scaling layer, which enables massive amounts of car data to get verified for its authenticity, integrity, and most importantly, plausibility, and shared in a privacy-preserving and anonymous way. And users are incentivized to stay up and running with their devices and vehicles to get network rewards, which ultimately creates a trust score for each vehicle and each device. And most importantly, it enables these users to share whatever data they want, whenever they want, and with whomever they want. And ultimately, by doing so, we provide a verified data to the data consumers, who could be these car companies, tier one suppliers, third-party service providers such as insurance companies, maintenance companies, service companies, etc., so that they can have access to the data that they need for their application in a completely explicitly consented way. And of course, the role of the interchange stack is huge in this. And maybe like I'll give like the word to Marco and add anything on top of that related to that.
Awesome. Yeah. So Soarchain is kind of like is definitely leading it. We're trying to support them in the best way possible by building the software that they use. So the Cosmos SDK, alongside other colleagues from IBC, Comet BFT, Cosmosm, with all these parts of this interchain stack. And so we focus primarily on Cosmos SDK and the Cosmos SDK users. And what we really try and dive into there is providing secure, efficient, performant chain that allows people to really build whatever they want. The limitation of using the software is up to their imagination, is our goal.
To also like provide a small backstory, I hope we won't exceed the time, but like initially when we started back in like early 2021, we already had like a network of cars. Mostly we were working B2B, and we wanted to build this blockchain where the nodes would also have different roles, like such as verifying each other. So we thought that it would be very essential to have a different consensus mechanism where the nodes themselves would actually participate in the consensus rather than like having separate validators, etc. So we architected something. We started working on it. We based it loosely off of another DePIN, the first one of the DePIN projects, Helium consensus layer. And then we needed to design a networking layer. We need to design all these functionalities ourselves, and the development just got out of hand. We needed like 20 people, 30 people just to maintain what we've developed. I'm not even mentioning to make it production ready. So we somehow came across Tendermint. Back then it's Comet BFT right now. And what we were able to do in like 6 months time, we were able to do in about 2 months time with just the Tendermint core. And then we saw the Cosmos SDK, and those like 2 months actually became 2 weeks. Of course, this is like the very first implementation of the logic. So we thought that, okay, we can use this thing. And as we continued using it, it's been instrumental in bootstrapping the Soarchain network, and the modular architecture made it very easy to develop custom modules. I think that's the best part about it. Like we have this proof of availability module, data provision request module, all need to be deployed as on-chain logic. We cannot have any off-chain logic to support that because of the architecture. And we have, by the way, experimented with a lot of EVM-based chains like L1s, L2s, doing this, trying to implement this logic with like smart contracts, but ultimately only Cosmos SDK was capable of allowing us to implement what we needed. So that's also, we have the Cosmosm, the IBC aspect as well, which I might also touch up later.
I'm going to ask about those. You mentioned both of you mentioned a few times was interchain, right? So, right now you're working on solving industry problems regarding security safeguards and direct data that's collected by cars and connected devices, right? You're using the interchain stack to help create a more robust and secure network. How do you do that? How do you solve those problems and use the interchain?
Yeah, I mean, to start from the like automotive industry, it is the worst when it comes to privacy preservation. Even like a few months ago, Mozilla published a report where like almost all top 25 car companies were being criticized for using, processing, and selling their users' data without their explicit consent, or not even consent, but even them not knowing it. So to be able to address this problem, you cannot obviously go on an all-out war with these companies, but you would need to provide solutions that benefit both these companies and their end users. So it needs to be like a balanced solution. We need to consider the B2B side of things as well as the B2C side of things. So ultimately, we do this by providing this decentralized network with its own governance, data verification, data streaming, and most importantly, an open development environment, which will lead to the biggest app store we've seen so far. And we have this system called proof of availability, and it is the way that the Soarchain network keeps track of which vehicles and devices can prove at any given time the availability of the data that they're generating, not the data itself, but a proof of it. So this enables a healthy and active ecosystem of data generating nodes while giving the option of sharing the data itself to the users themselves rather than these car companies or other companies tap into their data without them knowing. Of course, for this, again, the interchange, I'll also give the word to Marco, but you need full sovereignty on your chain. It shouldn't be dependent on an underlying L1, another chain. It should be very flexible in terms of what you can implement. I also discussed this in the previous point, but like you need to be able to implement very specific logic in the underlying VM. It should be very modularized, and also it should be very interoperable because uh, although you are like a single chain, you cannot do everything yourself. So you need to be able to transfer assets with other interoperable chains, use their functionalities at times needed through this is of course like referring to IBC. But yeah, maybe Marco could give a lot better insight on this one, especially for the sovereignty and the interoperability parts.
Yeah, with the interchain stack, the biggest difference between Web 2 and Web 3, I would say that is that in Web 3, everyone has been on the train of we need to rebuild the wheel every time we come up with a new idea. We need to rebuild this stack, we need to build another VM, and that just takes away the time from people to actually develop a useful product like Soarchain. And so in our case, the idea with the interchain stack is like Dennis mentioned, like, hey, like take it, use it, build what you want with it. Don't worry about low-level protocol, P2P systems, all that fancy stuff, all that fancy complex stuff. Just worry about building a product. And then everything else kind of comes to it later on. Like in Cosmos, sovereignty is the biggest selling point. It has a stack, but also you can really build on your own. You're not limited by the people around you, by the chains around you. It's really just as fast as you can go yourself. Having your own security, but also having the option to share security with the likes of maybe you're using Ethereum and Celestia, maybe you're using the Cosmos Hub with their shared security. So there's definitely a lot of options for people what to build, but at the root, it's how are you able to actually focus on your product instead of having to build a stack to be able to build your product?
Makes sense. I see a lot of people recreating the wheel. Um, that might be considered an industry problem, but in your industry that you're in right now, regarding the vehicles and regarding the data there, you know, uh, you mentioned data privacy is one issue. There are other industry problems, right, such as fragmentation and verification. What role does the proof of availability have in solving those two problems as well?
Yep. So one thing again about like the automotive industry, it is very fragmented, and this means that like there are thousands of companies, many market forces at play, and due to the nature of the industry, everything happens in a very closed fashion. So there is no open development, no sharing technologies, no whatever. But ultimately, um, a vehicle is manufactured and they go on the same road, regardless of what the brand is, when something needs to be developed, the company would want to develop that on its own, or at least within its own ecosystem in a very close fashion. This ultimately causes them to not collaborate and thus slow down the advancement of the technologies that could have been developed way earlier. So there could have been an app store for cars 10 years ago. There could have been much higher level autonomy vehicles 10 years ago. And of course, these closed systems ultimately mean black boxes that the users have no control over what's happening inside of it. So to enable them to collaborate with each other without, of course, disregarding the end users, we saw the best way to do this is through a decentralized network where these companies can develop and deploy their own applications that have access to the user data while giving back the user to power to choose what they want to share and how much they want to share. And the proof of availability part, it basically enables people to, again, prove their vehicle's availability without sharing the data itself. And ultimately, we also have this data provision request, which is a special type of transaction that the data consumers, and by data consumers, we can mean like OEMs, car manufacturers, tier ones, insurance companies, anyone who would want to have access to this data, either for using them in their apps to serve the people back again, or just do some analytics on them and advance their technology. They basically send this transaction to Soarchain, which contains a lot of information. It asks for, let's say, they want to use a tire pressure data from cars that are manufactured after 2017 within the Germany region, and that are cars that are, I don't know, sedan or something. It's like a very extensive list. You can filter a lot of things. And once this goes on chain, the vehicles that are eligible get notified. And you as a user, let's say your vehicle is eligible, you get asked, do you want to join this DPR? And if you opt in to join, then you start, you basically get paid by the company for using their data. And while all of this is happening, you are completely anonymous, and nothing actually goes on chain in an unencrypted way or in a way that it would expose your data. So it's basically, as Thorchain, we are not the data aggregator or the company or the middleman that silos the data, categorizes it, catalogs it, and chooses to whom to sell, but rather just facilitate this exchange between the parties through the decentralized and self-maintaining infrastructure. So yeah, this is how we address these issues.
You said something there that I had forgotten that I did in my life. You said auto insurance, and I used to be this is a while ago, financial manager at AIG, and one of the jobs I had at that company was I was a financial planning and analysis manager for the international auto insurance and property insurance and personal lines, right? One of the big challenges in the insurance industry is this concept of IBNR, which is incurred but not reported, right? That's because insurance is a spread business, and so that's a big like blind spot. But you guys have this vision of transforming vehicles into global data hubs, right? And I'm thinking, I think that's a really untapped landscape. So how can you achieve that? How can you achieve that global data hub ecosystems using your company, your platform? How can you do that?
Yeah, I mean, to be able to have even like a claim to become a global data hub, you would of course need the infrastructure to support that. And by infrastructure, I both mean the decentralized network side, as well as the data verification pipeline parts, which are basically interconnected. Currently, when you look at a vehicle, it is said that the data that a single vehicle generates um, is valued at around $500 per year, and it goes up as the vehicle gets higher end. So by the way, this is only the value of the raw data that many different parties are willing to pay per vehicle. It doesn't take into account the value that could have been derived from utilizing this data to improve the mobility experience of people or lower the lifetime costs associated with their vehicle. And it is said that the in-car app market will be $1 trillion industry, and will be multiple times larger than the smartphone app market that it is right now. That is how the untapped landscape look like nowadays, and we believe that the best way to uncover this is, of course, it's a hidden market potential, and um, it is to basically create an incentive structure that benefits everyone in the ecosystem while not depending on a single operating company or a centralized consortium, which was the go-to solution mostly within the automotive industry, which never worked. And ultimately, the applications such as predictive analytics, pay how you drive insurance, ride sharing, logistics, infotainment, autonomy applications, assisted driving applications will be enabled by Soarchain, will be deployed on Soarchain due to this incentive structure and the open ecosystem that many companies could actually get involved. So the mobility is very close. I always give this example, like as a developer, let's say you're like a 20-year-old developer, you want to go into an industry, you can go to biotech, you can go to space tech, you can go to AI, but you cannot go to mobility. You cannot develop something for mobility because it is very closed. It is an extremely closed ecosystem, and you just cannot develop applications. But if we have this decentralized app store for mobility, you would now have competing apps that would have the same function, which would ultimately drive the quality up and the prices down. And you would be able to pick as a user which app to use. Let's say like right now, the insurance companies, you gave that example. So they are trying to get into your car. You plug a module inside your car. But imagine only sending data to a single company. You don't know what they're doing with your data. Instead of that, you can again plug a device into your vehicle, which gives you access to countless applications within the ecosystem, and you can pick the insurance companies. Out of 10 insurance companies, maybe you will pick one because they gave you better premium, or they have this I don't know, discount for you because you are a better driver. Maybe you drive once a week. So it's all about the ability to pick and to create this competition so that we would be using better services.
Got it. Parker, what are your thoughts?
I think it's an industry that has been going on for a lot of years now. So my first crypto job was, like, before Cosmos, was in enterprise blockchain, and so went to a bunch of more conferences and stuff like this around mobility and mobility as a service. And it was interesting back then, but it was just way too early. Like, I think many of the things in the blockchain space in 2017, 2018, 2019 was in the right direction. It was just way, way too early. And so in that sense, this is one of those things that back then it was way too early. The tech was too random. I remember what jumped in and started helping a team, and they're writing a whole blockchain in Java. And I was like, this is going to be 10 times the amount of work if you guys have to like maintain your own stack. And that was before I knew about the Cosmos SDK as well. And so the combination interchain stack, what Soarchain is doing, being where we are in today's market with the technological advances in the last 6-7 years, it does seem like the perfect time to really start pressing on this industry in order to really adapt it for the upcoming evolution of technology, be it with blockchain or without?
Yeah. I remember 2017. I remember the very first crypto commercial that I saw back in the ICD days was this giant monorail in the sky. I think it was the China VC company or something like that. I was like, this looks pretty cool, you know. Um, but I agree with both of you in the fact that for the mobility market, we are nowhere near where we should be. I constantly hear people saying to me, why don't we have flying cars yet? They promised us flying cars. We don't have any. We don't have that. Like, but there's tremendous potential in the mobility market. How are we going to get there? When are we going to get there? And what's realistic and achievable versus what's a VC funded monorail commercial?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. That's like the question that keeps me at night, basically. And like initially, I mentioned that like I was working on autonomous vehicles, so it is fairly easy to like produce an autonomous vehicle, let's say level 3.5, maybe 4, in a controlled environment for a single vehicle. But when you put hundreds of these vehicles at the same place, they just cannot operate, because this is where I like refer to the lack of a connectivity layer. So that's why we actually went out to create this connectivity layer. So we saw all of this as a connectivity layer to connect the vehicles to each other, to the cloud, to the infrastructure, and also to the people, to the road users, to generalize. And I mean, the mobility market itself is already like almost like $1 trillion industry, maybe more. It depends on what you include in it. But the problem is that from this $1 trillion industry, the benefit that the end user gets is fairly low. And this is mostly due to, again, all the reasons that I've counted, like the closed ecosystem, the competing, and like these car companies, or like all of these companies could be collaborating, and they would actually be, everyone would be earning more, including the end users. So it's not a zero-sum game. Like if they were to collaborate, the technology would be advanced, would be would advance faster, and ultimately we would have these autonomous cars. I'm not so bullish on the flying cars yet, and I'm not so sure about its function, to be honest. But ultimately, the mobility would be evolved into something um, of a very shared nature, where instead of like having your own vehicle, maybe you would be subscribed to a service where you could get vehicle. I mean, basically like a decentralized Uber like application, which would encapsulate all your needs, including so you wouldn't, as an end user, you wouldn't have to deal with all these services, taxes, insurance, etc. You would probably just be paying something, one subscription fee, and you would get um, a seamless mobility experience. So that's how I envision the mobility would be. And to be honest, that would be the realistic path, instead of every single one of us having a flying car and flying within the cities. Yeah, that would also be cool, but I'm more for a shared ecosystem.
Can you
What do you
remind me
think?
what the question was?
Yeah, the true potential of the mobility market, and how do we get there?
So okay, so I'm gonna keep it short because I have this like one theory of like the whole mobility market, but it's not entirely focused on the mobility as a service market. No, I think it's like it's right now we're in this place where for the last almost 100 years, the last 80 years, the last 60 years, we've kind of been doing the same thing. And it's working to a certain extent. There's still a lot of overhead with managing everything, and things aren't seamlessly integrated. There's inefficiencies in this information retrieval from cars. You need to plug something in, you need to go to the DMV, you need to do this stuff. Um, it is like it works, but like in an advancing world, in a lot faster moving world, we do need to like push the bounds of what's possible. And it's like having seamless integration, continuous information feeds into cars, into mobility vehicles that allow people to a lot more efficiently do different things, but also a lot more efficiently do insurances, like get around cities. There's like the list can really go on as far as you can think, but and this is really where the whole mobility space is kind of going. It's getting there slow and steady, slower than we would like. Of course, like I mean, Dennis and I work in the blockchain space. You've been in the blockchain space yourself. Like the last 2 years, I think there's been like 10 years of innovation. And then when we step outside of our bubble and go to these normal work and go to the like this normal Web 2, like mobility and stuff, those are that for them, 10 years is a drop in the bucket. And so that's the hardest part, I think, for a lot of crypto people to be able to see that future 10 years out when we are working on timescales that are fractions of those, because the partnerships, the distribution of devices, the distribution of the network effect is the hardest thing and the thing that takes decades. And we're trying to accelerate that. We have the means to accelerate it, but it's more so the world needs to catch up. The people who aren't as technologically savvy need to have something that makes it easier for them to adopt it so we can move forward at a faster rate.
I agree. I agree. I've been in crypto since 2017. I feel like I'm 100 already. So, um, but you both said something interesting, and you talked about cities. You talked about say this connectivity layer doesn't fully exist yet. Say it does, and say there's no silos and there are sharing. You know, this way we can create intelligence transportation systems, right? And then one of the things that Soarchain does is help to work to transform smart cities, right? Or is an area of focus. How do you transform smart cities through the creation of intelligent transportation systems?
That's also like, of course, it looks like a future vision, but even could be implemented today, and it is being implemented today. So vehicles really play a crucial role as data hubs because they're not only generating data that like internal data like engine temperature, etc., but they are becoming data hubs that can actually um, capture data from the environment. So this is especially very important when you look at the smart cities. We were always told that, okay, we'll have IoT devices and we would be having data from all these sensors and we would have a smart city. But it is much more dynamic than that because the cities are always changing. And to keep track of this change, you would have to keep track of the environment, the changing environment. And I think the vehicles and any kind of like transportation um, device would be the best fit for this job. The real-time data from these vehicles could be used to manage, of course, like traffic flow, optimize the public transport, even plan the urban infrastructure, and ultimately um, to enhance emergency response systems. And of course, this integration would not only improve the urban mobility, but it would also contribute to the overall efficiency and the sustainability of the city, the management of the city. Of course, all of these like having this platform, like server on wheels with sensors on it, it really allows everyone to create new business models, new revenue streams, many different innovative applications and services. So ultimately, that would be the path to a smart city rather than having millions of static sensors that send some data once every hour or so.
We don't live in a utopia. And it's like I think what everyone imagines a smart city being is like a form of a utopia. Like we have these images in our heads. And I do think that what was before, like in the 90s, early 2000s, and what the 2020s will be like, I think in some things we are there. It's just like the architecture of the buildings and and maybe the design of the cars didn't change in the way that it was shown in the movies. And so I do think that like the whole mass system, that there are devices um, throughout the city, like what Dennis was saying, like a lot more adaptable. Cities can adapt faster. Like cities are constantly moving, like Dennis said. They are theoretically like they are living organisms. Like people leave, people come, the city's clean, the city's dirty, there's crime, there's no crime. And these are all and this is all statistics that is based on what's going on in the city and what kind of information is being fed into the overall department of the city to like help manage things. And so with like this is the utopia that we have seen, and this is the utopia that like allows us to really build a more efficient city. I live in Berlin, Germany. For everyone who knows Germany, the myth of efficiency is not true, and everything is a lot of paperwork. It was funny in a few videos, it's like when you move to Germany versus when you move to another country in Europe, the amount of paperwork you need. And in some other countries, it's all on a USB stick. In Germany, it's about 100 pieces of paper. You need to buy a printer and everything like this. And it's like these things are inefficient. And the cities themselves, while they are somewhat clean, they're managed, everything can be better. And it's like in doing so, having this real-time information allows the city to adapt and grow in a more meaningful way instead of lagging 5 to 10 years. I mean, when we do look at humans ourselves, like we are living organisms as well, and we do wear fitness trackers like around the clock. We wear like I have a Whoop on right now. People wear Garmins, people do all this stuff, and it's in order to optimize their health, to optimize their longevity. And so if we think about it, like this mobility as a service industry could be the health monitor of a city, like Dennis was saying, it could make it more efficient, it could make it more seamless.
I'm just thinking, kind of like, um, what kind of role could it have had? Like last Thursday, there was a major like I'm a little ways away from Route 95, and there was a major highway going from New York to Boston, and there was a fuel tanker that exploded on the highway. It burned out a bridge. It had a massive accident, and the traffic was messed up for 5 days. It would take me an hour, 2 hours to go. You know what? Usually takes me 10 minutes. You know, if they finally got all the traffic, redistributed, but if we had, an operable device where everybody, platform where everybody was sharing and the silos were gone or were blown away, could there have been an automatic or quicker or more efficient redistribution of the traffic patterns around that fuel tanker being exploding? So, in a practical way, how could Soarchain help make that possible with the integration or creation of a traffic pattern correction in the moment?
Yeah, so this is actually something we've worked on previously with Suzuki and Maruti. They developed their own applications specifically for safety. They were very focused on safety applications and especially vehicle-to-vehicle communication. So it was exactly this case, this scenario where it was called the hazardous location alert, and there was like a supposed um, hazard, like an explosion that it had 500 meter radius in the demo. They already piloted this, by the way, a year ago. And this information would be initially broadcasted by the first responders, and this broadcast would be received by the first receiver, and then it would be relayed to the second generation of cars, third generation, fourth, fifth, etc. And it would actually cover the whole radius, and all the cars within that radius would be notified by this incident. And this is called the relevance area, and the ones that are not within the relevance area would not be notified. And they also added this feature where if you had this route in your navigation with these waypoints, and if any of your waypoints was also within this relevance area, if you were even outside the relevance area, you would get notified because it would know that you've actually initially notified that you were going to go there. So it's all about like back and forth communication and how interconnected the system is. And I think these types of applications will, like many countless applications, will be enabled by Soarchain, which we see an example already.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to follow you guys more closely now. Thank you very much for your time today. So I have one last question, and it's this. How can people find out more information about you, about Soarchain, about binary builders, about the Cosmos SDK? How can they find out more about you?
Yeah, I mean, they can just go to the soarchain.com, and through there they can go to our link tree. It's got all these Discord, Twitter, Telegram. We've got all the socials. They can go to the documentation, read our white paper, participate in our testnet and soon to be mainnet. So yeah, and we're also like very bullish on Cosmos SDK and interchain stack in general. So yeah, I'll give the word to Marco there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Twitters to go follow. We need to work on our meme game, but to start, just at Cosmos, and then the Cosmos SDK one is at Cosmos_SDK. So those are the best places to stay up to date with what's happening in Cosmos, but also what's happening with the software, the Cosmos SDK. Beyond that, there's a website, of course, binary.builders, but there isn't as much interesting stuff going on there. If you want to get into the weeds, get into the dirt, then check out the GitHub repo. If you're not a developer and looking to become a developer, there's still some good issues for you to pick up, for you to learn, and we're happy to hold your hand and have you learn alongside with us as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Likewise.
For having us.
Good job.
Likewise.